Wanted to introduce myself to anybody who jumped in here late. John Wyrick here. I have been with Levelset now for 5+ years. Spent a long time of that on our sales team, developing new partnerships and new users of Levelset. And now I actually do our new hire training and I do coaching for our existing sales team. So very excited to get started talking to you guys here today. Some of my favorite customers that I worked with or partnered with during my time as a rep were electrical contractors, electrical suppliers. They're a big part of the user base we've got here. So again, thank you guys for all being here. As questions come up, feel free to use the Q&A function or the chat, and we will make sure that we get to them. If you're brand new to Levelset, or you have not had a chance to poke around on the website much, I just wanted to give you a rundown of kind of who we are. We are a software company based out of New Orleans. We've got offices in Austin, Texas as well. And we work with contractors and suppliers, both in the electrical space and throughout the rest of the construction industry to help them secure fair payment. A lot of different vehicles, I guess, that we have that we bring to the market and bring to folks like you guys in that area, things like legal help, things like material financing. We're not going to cover it all today. We're really going to be focused on lien rights management. But again, if it's your first time with us, welcome. We hope to see you on the site looking into some other ways we might be able to help. So let's talk about today's focus a bit more. The first thing we're going to cover is lien rights paperwork, essential lien rights paperwork. It is the bread and butter of what Levelset does for a lot of folks. And when we talk to electrical suppliers, electrical contractors in the industry who are not concerned with slow payment, who are getting paid on their own terms, it's usually because they've got a tight lien rights and paperwork process. We'll specifically look at a few stories of customers we work with or we have been partnering with here recently, and then we'll take a look at the platform itself, at the Levelset system, do a quick preview, and give you guys some time for some question and answer. Jumping right into it, guys. Some of these may look or sound familiar depending on where you are in the country. I saw that we had a few folks from California, so things like preliminary notices may be commonplace. I know we had a few Astros and Rangers fans in there, so in Texas, these are going to be monthly notices. But when we talk about essential lien rights paperwork at Levelset, guys, what we mean is things like preliminary notices, lien waivers, notices of intent to lien, last but not least, mechanics liens. At a very high level, guys, preliminary notices are documents that are typically sent at the start of a job, and they give a company lien rights, whether they're a supplier or a contractor, in case that party goes unpaid for work, right? Whether it's supplies that never get paid for, a pay app that gets ignored, it gives them that security. Lien waivers, they're going to do the opposite. A lot of you guys are familiar with these. They're exchanged at the time of payment. There's conditional lien waivers and unconditional lien waivers. We could talk about all the different types for probably our full 30 minutes here, but making sure that a company's got a tight way of exchanging paperwork right when money is being exchanged is always key. Notice of intent to lien, guys, that's a demand letter. That's our, we're sick of waiting on an invoice, and we need to make sure that our business gets paid. Depending on the state you live in, notices of intent to lien and preliminary notices may be required. They may not. Again, what we find is that electrical contractors, electrical suppliers that use them consistently see the most consistent time to payment. And then that last one, I'm sure we've all got some experience with, it's the ballistic or the nuclear option. Our goal at Levelset is to make sure that companies who work with us don't have to get to that point. We want to make sure that cash flow is coming in predictably and businesses are getting paid before things need to escalate up to that point. So let's talk about how some companies use those lien documents. First one that I love to talk about here is Louie. Louie is the director of project controls for CSI electrical contractors. And prior to Levelset, they had a lot of the headaches, a lot of the concerns that we hear time and time again in the industry. Not a lot of oversight into their protected AR. When they did need to protect their accounts receivable or lien rights or pursue late payment, it was kind of a slow and a manual process. And that was an especially big problem for Louie because they were billing about 150 to 180 invoices or projects a month. So very, very high volume user with, again, some of the common headaches that we hear around wasting time on paperwork and not being able to manage the status of the AR. Now, when Louie got partnered here with Levelset, these are some of the great results that he saw. You can read his quote here. We'll share it afterwards. But at the end of the day, what we were able to do for Louie and his team is give them oversight into when they were protected. We were able to save them some time on a few automated processes, right? Avoiding any redundant tasks for our credit team or our accounting team. And then one thing that we'll talk about here in a little bit more detail is that we were able to make it a lot clearer for Louis who they needed to send paperwork to, and more importantly, who they could expect payment from on a job. So researching that payment or project chain was a big element of what we did here. And we'll talk about that here in just a moment. I want to pause really quick. Cam, any questions here that might have popped up? I've kind of got a few different screens going and don't want to miss anybody.
Yeah, John, I got one here. Someone messaged me asking about the volume that Louis was managing. It looked like 2,000 projects. Is that a typical volume that Levelset sees?
It's not. No, it's not. That's a good question. That's maybe not 10 times the normal volume, but Louis is a guy who definitely has a higher notice or project volume than most. We work with everybody from, mom and pop electrical companies really getting off the ground to some more recognizable names. That was a great segue for me, Cam. Companies like CED. So we're going to talk about them here a little bit. I'm sure everybody's familiar with CED. We work with them in a few regions around the country. And of course, they're on the higher end of that project spectrum, Cam. But again, we work with folks who are really just billing a few jobs a month as well. Now, for CED, you can imagine the headaches that Louis had, they had, in spades. They were wasting even more time or spending even more time having to chase down job information. Like a lot of larger suppliers, their sales team was great about making sales. They weren't always great about collecting project information. And so that made it very, very hard for them to verify things. And more importantly, they were causing friction with their customers because they were having to constantly pester them for the information that they needed on preliminary notices or on lien waivers, and that maybe their sales rep should have gotten in the first place. So when they partnered with Levelset, their favorite two words were scout team. Our research department guys, we call the scout team. And what they do is they ensure that when a supplier or a contractor closes a new contract and gets a job address, we're going to piece together the rest of the information. Things like who the property owner is, if there's a lender on the project or anybody else in between that's going to be exchanging money. It's vital that those prelims and those lien waivers make it to all parties involved. And so without having to bother their team, again, they put the research onus on our scout team. We like to call them kind of a team of private investigators. And they were able to eliminate a lot of headaches and a lot of redundancy on CED's end, having to chase down job site info and figure out who in the heck they needed to send this paperwork to in the first place. I'll pause again. Cam, how are we doing on questions?
I've got one here for you. I know companies don't like causing any issues by bugging their customers. Where does the scout team get this project info from?
Good question. And we could take a look at that in the product here in just a moment. But the short version is that it really depends on the level of research our users need from Levelset. So for the vast majority of companies that we work with, we're never going to have to bother anyone in their tree. We're not going to have to call their customer or anything, because our team has got access to about a half a dozen online databases where they're able to go find information that would otherwise be buried in the county recorder's office or on an assessor's report or in the other weird corners of the internet that we sometimes have to chase some of that job info. So good question there. We will reach out to customers if users ask us to, but our default is certainly to let them be and to find the information in a few other places. Let's talk about getting paid. Payday is certainly everybody's favorite day in the industry, whether you're an employer or you are a project manager or AR specialist waiting on a check. One of the big things that we talked about earlier, and we'll take a look at here in a moment, is lien waivers. And I know when I've spoken to electrical contractors, especially larger ones in the past, lien waivers can be a pain because they usually have different phases on a project. And so when a party is on a job and then off a job and then on a job and off a job, it can get a little concerning or a little confusing about what types of lien waivers are needed to be exchanged. We specifically work with one electrical contractor here who was having to send waivers on their own behalf, and they were regularly having to track down waivers from their suppliers or from equipment rental companies that might have been utilized. And as you can see, they had a lot of the same headaches that we see. Hard to tell where paperwork was, hard to generate paperwork at scale and keep it organized. And that's, again, where Levelset came in. So we have something called the document inbox or toolbox that we can look at in a moment, but making sure that when a check is literally being handed across the table or is in the mail, making sure that waivers are in place is going to be key to ensuring that there's no unnecessary drags, or unnecessary risk taken on when a contractor or supplier is getting a check to cash. So big element that we help with as well. Like I said, we're focused on the lien rights management process here today, and that specifically has to do with some of this paperwork we have covered: prelims, researching who's on your job, and making sure that waivers are covered. I'm going to jump into the system here really quick so we can take a peek at all of this in action. I want to pause real quick and see if we have any questions though before I do that. Cam, anything else we need to dig into?
No questions on my end right now, but feel free to drop them into the chat or the Q&A, and we'll have some time at the end to answer any specific questions. So start typing those up.
Even if it's not a super important question, it gives me an opportunity to drink some water. So I would appreciate the interruption from anybody. Let's jump into it then, Cam. I appreciate that. For any of you guys who are brand new to Levelset, this is what our home screen looks like. I tell people all the time, though, that nobody buys software, nobody partners with a company like Levelset because of our cool home screen. So what I'm going to do is take us into an example of a project. So again, we saw that we had a few folks dialed in from California. What I went ahead and did here for us to take a look at is created a project, Hyatt Regency in Fresno, where we have got the system set up for an electrical subcontractor hired by a GC. Now, we talked a little bit about prelims earlier, and if you're like a lot of people we talk to, the idea of tackling that paperwork on your own is not ideal. I'm going to show everybody here what it looks like very quickly to just send a quick document, and we'll see along the way how quickly and easily we can adjust the paperwork we're sending or send any other type of paperwork. So we need to send that 20-day preliminary notice here in Fresno. There's going to be some information that we got to have, things like the estimated contract amount, but there's also going to be a lot of information that we know it's hard to find. Who owns the property? Is there a lender working with Hyatt Regency? All of those questions are ones that are important to know the answer to, and that we want to take off of our users, our customers' plates here. So that scout team is going to be key. Again, they let our customers just give us the information they've got, even if it's partial. And when our users come in here and say, Levelset, it's time to protect my lien rights on this project, we're going to take it from there. You'll see in a moment, I like to compare this a little bit to an Amazon order confirmation page. This is the final step for a company to send a preliminary notice, or really any of the other documents we talked about: lien waiver, notice of intent to lien, or mechanics lien. From this point on, it's on Levelset to make sure it's done correctly. And you can see some information here about how we're going to process the order, the status of the order, as well as, information about who the documents themselves are being sent to. So we said earlier, consistent paperwork processes is usually what leads to consistent payment time in this industry. And in making sure that a company's got oversight into a job like this, and the documents they've sent is going to be key. Pausing really quick. Cam, I know we didn't have too much information here in the slide deck about monitoring for problems, but one other thing I always like to show companies here when they're taking a look at a Levelset project page is that we're looking out for you, even when you might be asleep, or even when you might be distracted with other elements of running a business. This payment problem monitoring here, everybody, is one thing that people really love partnering with Levelset for. This is us letting businesses know two things very, very simply, and I'll show you one really quick. The first is, are my lien rights secure? And giving a nice black and white answer for that. You can see here when we entered a date and our system recognized that we'd sent the prelim, it's going to let us rest assured that there's no problems. This second one here is a little bit more of what I like to say, looking around the corner. And what this means, or what this is looking for, folks, is other parties, maybe outside of your electrical vertical, who are on a job and might have run into payment issues. We're looking for things like notices of intent to lien that other companies have sent, liens that have been filed, bankruptcies that might have taken place, all of the things that we know can trickle down and affect everybody on the job site. We're going to keep right here front and center to make sure that that our users are fully aware of what's going on around them. Cam, I know there's a couple directions we can take things here. I want to be cognizant of everybody's time. give me some quick feedback. Is there anything in the product itself you think we should highlight real quick, or do we want to get to some Q&A and maybe get things wrapped up here?
Well, John, I know no one here is looking to manage another system. What type of integrations does Levelset have?
It's a great question. Thank you, Cam. I should have mentioned that earlier. So in the electrical space, guys, we specifically integrate with a handful of accounting systems. If anybody here is a QuickBooks user, desktop or online, we can plug directly into an accounting source that way. We also integrate with Procore and most of the other, kind of point of sale or ERP and accounting systems out there through some spreadsheet import. So that's a great point for users like Louis, who we talked about earlier, who might have, 2 or 3 jobs, 2 or 3 shipments a day going out. We don't want anybody to have to come in here and be a data specialist or a data entry specialist. We'll get those plugged right in. It really helps as well for things like lien waivers and some of that receivables element as well. So Cam, if we take a look here at the invoices section, we want to make sure when we're talking about a good lien rights management process that those waivers are taken care of efficiently. And you guys can see right here another example of Levelset taking the guesswork out of the process. So since we've got all the different lien law and lien requirements plugged into our system itself, it's going to know what type of action might be necessary for a given invoice. You can see here that this invoice is not paid. And so what the system is going to encourage us to do is send a conditional lien waiver, right? Once the system recognizes it has been paid, it's going to queue us up to send an unconditional lien waiver. And again, then we can avoid any of those barriers at the very last minute from money exchange in hands quickly and efficiently. Thank you.
Yeah, John, I got one last thing for you.
Yeah.
There's a lot going on here. What sort of training does Levelset offer for the software?
The best training, Cam, of course. No, that's a great question. So if anybody here, we should have put a slide in for the group. If anybody here is familiar with Trustpilot or Yelp, I highly recommend you checking out Levelset's Trustpilot page. One element that we pride ourselves on is not just selling a tool or tools, but providing that support. So anybody who works with Levelset or is interested in starting an account with Levelset, rest assured, the first thing we're going to do is get you introduced to your account manager, who is here in New Orleans or Austin, and we're going to make sure you get trained to use a tool like this. We understand that selling a vision like this and implementing a process doesn't happen automatically. And so that's a great question, whether it's from initial onboarding through our support experience that's talked about a lot on Trustpilot. Yeah, we are there the whole way. If anybody's got questions like that or more specific questions, I'd love to take them now. And you can see here, we're taking demos or signups for demos as well. If anybody wants that one-on-one call. I think I may have cut somebody off there. What's going on?
Hey, John, see, we've got a question here in the Q&A. This is from Ingrid. Yeah. They said, kind of new to the industry. We do commercial and public jobs. How can I know which job requires 20 preliminary notices? Thank you.
That's a great question, Ingrid.
Notice. So maybe it's a 20-day preliminary notice.
20-day preliminary notice. Ingrid, it's going to be hard for you to answer this. So maybe you can give me a thumbs up or raise your hand. Are you in California as well? With the 20-day notice reference? I'm going to guess so here briefly. The short answer here for this, Ingrid, is that in California, the project type, and in this is the case in most states. So let me speak more broadly. In most states, the project type is only one factor in determining whether or not something like a preliminary notice is required. There's a lot of other factors that can matter for an electrical company. The first one that jumps to mind is who hired the company onto the project, who their client was. And an example of that is that, let's say an electrical supplier who sells materials directly to a general contractor or a property owner is going to have completely different requirements than if they sell to a subcontractor on the job. And so all those different rules and complexities are broken down really well in our blog and in our free resources. If you're just getting started, Ingrid, I'm actually going to send you an email later about something we call the Credit Management Academy that I think will be really helpful. But more importantly, if I didn't make it clear, calculating those types of requirements and deadlines is the core part of what our system does when a user enters a job. So we're doing the whole, I like to call it lien law Tetris, to figure out what the requirements are, and we'll keep those front and center for you folks. So great question, Ingrid. Thank you.
John, got another question here from Vanessa. Yeah. Vanessa says, I heard Levelset integrates with QuickBooks Online. What about QuickBooks Desktop?
It does. We do integrate with QuickBooks Desktop, Vanessa. It is a very, very similar experience with just a slightly different setup. So that's something we can certainly accommodate.
And what if someone doesn't have QuickBooks and maybe they're using spreadsheets to manage all this? Is there some sort of solution there?
Yeah, listen, I like to say as long as our users get us the information, we've got about half a dozen ways we can get into the system. So for something easy like spreadsheets or larger receivables files that may come out of an accounting system, we can actually import those directly. It's a key part of that relationship that a user would have with their account manager. But we also have users, guys, who just send us job sheets. They scan their point of sale job sheets that come from the sales team. They get them to Levelset, and we take care of some of that data entry. Again, we don't want you guys having to spend your time on those types of tasks when we can make sure the more important things like notices and seeing our receivables and lien rights can happen a bit more easily. So as long as you get us the data, we'll get it in. Like I said, are these effective with jobs that are not bonded? So now I see the questions. I got this one, Cam. Small projects and or service projects. Excellent question. I'm not an attorney. I want to be really careful here, right? But as a general rule, both lien rights and the lien notices and documents we're talking about are very, very, very effective for service work, smaller non-bonded projects, anything from a small remodel in a home to, a $500 invoice for service work can be protected typically by lien rights. And more importantly, what we find, folks, is that it comes back to that consistent process. So even if a company never dreams of going to the point of filing a mechanics lien, documents like preliminary notices, invoice reminders, and notices of intent to lien can do a lot of good for just speeding up net receivables and kind of giving that that message of we're aware of our rights, we're running a tight ship here, and we just want to make sure that we get our invoices handled fairly.
Thanks, John. Looks like there's no questions in the chat at this time, but I was thinking, if someone has kind of a long-winded question and they don't want to type it out, we'll give you guys the opportunity to raise your hand. And what we'll do then is unmute your microphone and you can just chat with us directly if that's something you want to do. So if you have a specific question you want to talk about, just raise your hand now. Otherwise, we'll get out of here and let you guys go on.
If you are struggling to find the raise your hand function, you're welcome to just chat, unmute me, and we'll get you unmuted that way as well. Either one will work. I'm not seeing any immediate takers, I don't think. Okay. Awesome. Well, guys, I hope this was helpful. If there are any specific questions you do have and we couldn't get the mute part figured out, I'll make sure that my email is included here. And if you've got something a little bit more urgent, I highly recommend that you check out levelset.com and either request a demo or otherwise fill out some of the information there to get a call. We got a team of folks standing by who would love to help with anything from a quick question about a project to some more questions about the system itself. With that said, y'all, thank you very much. I hope you guys have a great rest of your Wednesday afternoon or Wednesday morning, I guess, if we got anybody on the West Coast. And again, we hope to hear from everybody soon. Thanks again, and enjoy your day.